Thanks for joining us. I'm Brad Satin on behalf of Hapco Philadelphia, and today we're looking inside a new report by the Urban Land Institute. It's entitled Preserving Philadelphia's Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing. Small and mid-sized landlords are a big part of the answer here, and they make up a big part of the membership of Hapco Philadelphia. Joining us today to talk about this report, what it means to Philadelphia landlords and to the city, are Laura Slutsky, Executive Director of the Urban Land Institute Philadelphia, Jonathan Weiss with Equinox Property Group, and Jim Burnett with Vested In. Jonathan and Jim, by the way, were among the panelists who helped to create this report. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Nice to be here.
So Laura, let's get started with you. What is the Urban Land Institute? Why was this report done, and who is it for?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Brad. The Urban Land Institute is a global nonprofit organization, and we have two important pieces. The first is our mission, which is to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide. And that is really drives all of our work, including this project. And then the second piece is that we are a membership organization. We're about 45,000 members around the world and about 900 here in the Philadelphia region. And our members are an interdisciplinary group of real estate professionals, planning professionals, members of the public sector who come together around desire to do things, do bigger things and have an impact. So we do a range of educational programs, training programs. We do not lobby, but we do policy work in partnership with the public sector and nonprofit sector. So this project is part of that. This was done through our sponsors, the City of Philadelphia, Department of Housing and Development. And this was also done in partnership with the ULI Terwilliger Center for Housing, which is a dedicated center at our headquarters with members around the country supporting housing policy. So we can dig a little bit more in as we proceed on the topic itself, but we've worked with the city in conjunction with our members for a number of years around topics of affordable housing. And this one came up as something significant that we wanted to deliver a report around. All of the members that participated in this panel, including Jim and John, did so on a volunteer basis. And we had half of the panelists were local members in various parts of the industry, and the other half were national. So folks who do this work around the country and could bring that perspective.
I know this is a 32-page report on a particular type of Philadelphia rental property here. We're talking about rental units classified as naturally occurring affordable housing. So I guess I should ask, what exactly does that mean, and why is that so important to the ecosystem of rental properties in Philadelphia? Jonathan or Jim, take it away.
I'm happy to jump in. So I think that a large amount of affordable housing is produced through various subsidy programs from the federal government or city government. And, you know, in short, naturally occurring affordable housing is sort of everything else. So it's housing that's affordable for, you know, relative to people's incomes. A general rule of thumb is 30% of somebody's income is what is affordable to them for their housing costs. So the vast majority of housing that is affordable for folks, you know, moderate incomes or really any income that meets that income to housing cost criteria is provided by the private market. The federal government, PHAs, et cetera, provide a fairly small percentage of what's actually out there. So in Philadelphia, there's a vast amount of housing that's fairly affordable. And our findings were that 65% of housing that's naturally affordable is owned and operated by small landlords who own 5 or less properties. So, the issues that it gets into is a lot of that is in poor condition. A lot of times there's a lot of red tape and hurdles to operating and maintaining the affordability for those units. And that's really what this study was designed to dig into.
So let's talk a little bit about the factors at play here. There's the balance of improving the quality of these units, but still keeping them affordable. Gentrification, as we all know, sweeping certain parts of the city. Then there's the pandemic that crushed a lot of small landlords who weren't receiving rent. City council making decisions to help tenants, but some of these are coming at the expense of landlords. Some landlords, in fact, now want out of the city. So is it any wonder there's a critical shortage of affordable housing?
No, I don't think so. I think part of the challenge, similar to what John was saying, these are small mom and pop type of businesses. In a lot of cases, they're properties that were acquired through other family members who may be deceased, and they were passed on, or even if they weren't passed on through clear title, they started using the properties and leasing them out to other folks. So some of it is even off the market or are not being taxed. But these are still small business owners who essentially are generating revenue that's helping their families. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, what you had is a lot of support going to renters so that they could, not be evicted, which is totally understandable. But very little support was actually given to the landlord, even those that were licensed by the city, to provide them with the support so that they could continue to provide that piece of property and that rental unit to the tenant.
You know, it's interesting. The Philadelphia Housing Authority is offering bonuses to landlords who sign on with the Housing Choice Voucher program. It used to be known as Section 8. The city recognizes that affordable housing is becoming harder and harder to find, but at the same time, City Council passes laws that seem to scare landlords away, not letting landlords use certain eviction and financial records to make decisions about prospective tenants. There's a new bedbug law, a new lead paint law. So the point is the city wants to bring landlords in, but makes decisions that sometimes landlords hate. Does the balance have to be changed here?
Well, we think so. That was sort of a central finding of our panel, that there are a lot of hurdles. Here's an interesting tidbit that, when we were digging into this panel, I went ahead and looked online at landlord assistance programs or training programs. One of our models that we were referred to is that the city of Chicago does a really good job at this. And if you Google landlord training programs with city of Chicago, there's a variety of training programs they have where they bring in the police department and the L&I and social services groups to help landlords understand what it means to be a provider of housing and how to negotiate it. If you Google search City of Philadelphia landlord training programs, you're going to come up with a list of requirements and licenses and regulations that you need to meet. It's just a very different philosophy where, as you pointed out, there's bed bug requirements. There's all kinds of, well-intentioned regulatory pieces, but it's set up as obstacles, not as a way to help this group of people. So I think, however, that this panel was partly commissioned by the city because the city is looking for solutions. They recognize this issue. They recognize that providing housing through large federal subsidy programs is inefficient. It can cost a couple $100,000 to produce one affordable housing unit through new construction, through a prevailing wage tax credit program that's got all kinds of red tape, versus small landlords where you could put $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to help them repair their homes and create that unit of affordable housing. So it's really redirecting resources. I think the city is interested in exploring ways to do it, which is why they helped support this panel, and that's some of the things we got into.
I'll also add, Brad, that one of the key components of this project that happened prior to the panel, but you can see reflected in the report, is really coming together on the data front. There are a number of organizations that started to focus on this naturally occurring affordable housing stock, thinking about its critical role in neighborhoods, in preservation of housing. And so there's a couple sections here where the city was really interested in wrapping everyone's arms around what this universe looks like, who the owners are. And so hopefully even identification of that is a good step in the right direction to look at this universe of housing units and owners and structure, like John said, develop recommendations to structure programming and support to those owners to support these units.
The one finding that really struck me in everything that I read about it is the city has to start treating landlords less as just everyday property owners and more as business owners. What do you mean by that?
Well, some of the stuff that we talked about, and from my perspective, being we work with small businesses every day, and where we see these small landlords is literally as if they were running a business. Essentially, they're making investment in property. that property then needs to have continual support services. And around Philadelphia, there are literally tens of, business support organizations like Temple SBDC, but very few of them, to John's point, regardless of whether it's the city or a support organization, provide that type of support for small landlords, where they can learn about the financial management of a piece of property. They can learn about the property management of the property, and then even how to go out and identify potential tenants for those properties. And so I think that part of the report is really important, to start looking at these owners as more than just owners, but also as small business persons. And then you can start to think about the impact that they're actually having around Philadelphia.
I understand as part of this report, you did talk to landlords, some of them Hapco members. What were the common themes you heard about what frustrates them, specifically as we were talking about their abilities to access city services, learning about funding opportunities and other opportunities as business owners?
I think right now, coming out of the pandemic, all small businesses, not just the landlords, but the landlords and other small business owners are looking for solutions. I don't know that they even saw of themselves as business owners. So it is a little bit of trying to work on both sides of the equation. But the good news is they really want support now. They saw the impact of not being able to collect rent and not being able to evict tenants. And so right now, people are listening, but we only have a small window of opportunity before people start to go back to their normal habits. But if we can catch them now with the right support systems, I think we can get a lot of change within the city.
How much has the pandemic exacerbated this situation?
I think it certainly has. It's made it tougher. I mean, particularly on the, if nothing else, on the eviction piece with the eviction moratoriums. It's tough to be in a position where your customers are not required to pay you, but you're required to continue providing services to them. So it's a very, very difficult situation. And, there was some rental subsidy money that the federal government made available, but it was very complicated to access. So, I experienced it firsthand, and I think on that front alone, it's certainly been challenging. City services got very difficult to access because, the city kind of went virtual, to varied degrees of success and efficacy. So it got harder to work with city agencies at the same time.
What about from a landlord's point of view? What can they do to be better advocates for themselves?
Well, I think being a part of your organization is one place for them to start. And we saw this in a lot of other industries, in particular the barbers and salon industry. As COVID really began to hit and businesses started to close because they weren't allowed clients, this organization, the Pennsylvania Professional Image Alliance, they started to cobble together businesses. Well, you already have an organization that is out there willing to support small landlords. And so working together, you can get more resources than working alone. And I think it's really important to find networks that'll really help you as you continue to try to really maximize the opportunity of your property.
Jonathan, I'd echo that. I've been a member of Hapco for 20 years, actually, and it's a fantastic organization, as is the Urban Land Institute, and I'm sure we would welcome more members as well as a place to share information.
One of the points made, Jonathan, I think you made it, is that the window for change is small here. What is the price of inaction?
I think it was Jim, but I'll jump in. The price is huge. We are already, what's considered to be in crisis in terms of having housing that's affordable for most people in the city of Philadelphia. Over 50% of the city of Philadelphia's residents have housing costs that exceed 30% of their income. And I believe over 30% of the city's residents have housing costs that exceed 50% of their income. It's just sustainable, and it's a real challenge. And it will only get worse unless we find better solutions.
So where do we go from here? Hopefully this report will open some eyes, but what's the next step?
I think one of the things is really getting the report out to some of these small landlords. And that in and of itself is going to be a challenge. They may not know about Hapco, they may not know about ULI. And they only want to get information from trusted sources. So we have to work with trusted sources that they know so that we can get the word out about these opportunities and this information.
You know, through this pandemic, we've heard a lot of landlords who say, that's it, I'm calling it quits. These rental properties may not be rental properties much longer. So do you fear that this problem just gets worse?
Well,
I think that's the reason that the city has been focused on. I wanted to mention that we were focused on this universe of properties prior to COVID. And COVID just made everyone, the housing crisis that John referenced more significant, and the needs of renters and landlords. So, and we're, as a industry and housing policy folks, trying to avoid exactly that, Brad, both from the regulated stock, so those properties that are regulated by low-income housing tax credits and other federal subsidies, and these properties. So the point of this is to consider these naturally occurring properties that currently are not subsidized and not regulated as part of our affordable housing stock, and the owners as part of that universe. And today there's just not as built-in of an infrastructure like there is on the subsidized side to support for capital streams, for repair programs to maintain the housing quality. And so the hope is that by starting to focus on these property types, and ULI is interested in supporting this around the country, that's part of why we worked with Terwilliger, is that we can bring a focus that these properties are part of the city's affordable housing preservation strategy.
Laura, if folks want to read the report in its entirety, and I know you'd love for people to do that, where can they find it?
Yes, it is on our website at philadelphia.uli.org, and we will make sure that it lives on the homepage, so I don't have to give you anything more than that.
Very good. So Laura, Jonathan, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. And we also want to thank you at home for watching this. If you'd like to read more about that report in its entirety, Laura just mentioned it. It's philadelphia.uli.org. Thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
And this is a Hapco Philadelphia presentation.